DJ, you guys played this team 2 weeks ago. What can you take from that game that could help you for tonight?
Yeah, obviously the third periods, when you got a lead, you got to hold on to it. At the same time, they're a fast, skilled team, and they're going to make plays, and we just got to be ready for it.
They had a lot of shots on goal in that game. What did they do well to kind of generate that?
Yeah, they blow out the zone, and it creates a lot of space underneath, in the neutral zone, which allows them to get into our zone, and they just throw everything out the net, and they get bodies there and guys there, and we're just gonna have to do a good job of boxing out.
What's the biggest challenge defending Tim Stützle?
Yeah, I think he's he's skilled and he's a good skater, and he can make plays. He's one of those top end guys. So just being aware of when he's out there and having a good gap and good spacing.
How are you finding the 11-7 setup? Are you getting more used to it? Was it easy to adapt to? What are the challenges there?
Yeah, I think it's getting easier now. I haven't done it too much through my career, but I think the biggest thing is just mentally staying engaged. You might catch stints where you're on the bench for a little bit longer than you would if you had 6. So it's just the mental aspect of it.
The experimenting has gone on. Just wondering what's worked with you and Jake McCabe in your mind.
Yeah, he's easy to play with. He's a guy that does everything out there. He's a good skater, skilled, physical. So he's been easy to play with.
TJ, how much of the focus down the stretch here, given that you've got the playoffs locked up, is preparing for playoffs, just fine-tuning things?
Yeah, I think trying to make sure that our game as a team is as good as it can be come playoff time. You don't really want to let the foot off the pedal down the stretch either, and you want to sort of tiptoe that line and making sure everyone's feeling great going in, but at the same time everyone's at the top of the game.
What's the challenge of playing a team that's still kind of in that playoff hunt but really needs to almost win out?
I think it's beneficial. You play against a team that needs to win and is desperate, and you'd rather have that than someone that's out of it, or someone that's in it and maybe sort of just going through the motions, making sure that they're not getting hurt or things like that.
How do you think Luke Schen's changed the complexion of the D-corps?
Yeah, he's been great. He's solid back there, and he brings that element physically that we didn't have before. And then not to mention in the room his presence. He's been there before. He knows what it takes. So having a guy like that, it's important.
Alex, you guys played this team 2 weeks ago. What can you take from that?
Yeah, they're obviously a really hungry team right now. They're fighting for their playoff lives. It's an important game for them, but these are important games for us too. We're trying to feel good going into playoffs, solidify our spot, get home ice, and be feeling good about our game in all aspects.
What is the key to kind of feeling good at this point? I mean, there were a lot of new bodies added to the team and trying to find the chemistry there. Like, how do you kind of know where you're at that point where you guys are like, okay, we're good?
Well, I think that winning games the right way, being able to lock things down defensively, close out games when we need to, and really just controlling games from start to finish. That's the recipe for success, and that's what we're aiming to do every night.
The last time you guys played, it went to that 7th round shootout. Are you hoping with a back-to-back you can maybe make it a little tighter?
Well, I think that you're never going into a game hoping for the game to go into a shootout. We want to win the game in regulation and move on to tomorrow, but games against this team are always tough. They play us hard, and especially right now, their season's coming down to the line, and they need these wins. So we're expecting their best tonight, and we know that we need to be at our best as well.
What was that night like for you? Like, were you starting to raise your hand, like as the shootout got deeper and deeper, or what was the?
No, I'm 0 for 2 on penalty shots this year, so I don't know. I've only been in a couple shootouts before in my life, and obviously as it gets deeper in there, your mind starts to go to, okay, you might be going, and I had used that move before I went to it, and luckily it worked.
How are you doing with the 11-7? Are you getting more comfortable with it? Is it still a little tricky? How do you think it's going?
Yeah, I think probably the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, but it really doesn't affect our mindset as much. I think that at the end of the day, from a forwards perspective, everyone's minutes are pretty similar to what they normally are. I think it affects the D-men a little bit more than us, but yeah, we're still playing the same way. You might get a few more shifts here or there, depending on special teams or how the game's going, but it doesn't really affect our mindset that much.
TJ was saying it's almost better to be playing teams like Ottawa that's kind of in the do or die mode just to get the best out of you guys. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's good. It's good to test yourself in those games, in those important games as we go into playoffs. I think that ultimately you want to be treating every game the same way, but yeah, there is something to be said for having the other team have these games feel as important as we need to have them feel.
Is it hard not to think ahead to the playoffs at this point in the season?
Maybe some days, but on game days, no. I mean, maybe when you're downtime a little bit, you're thinking about it, you're excited about it. We know that it's around the corner, especially now that we've clinched a spot. But, I mean, on game days, it's really no different. It's not like we're like, oh my gosh, we gotta play another game. Like, game days are always exciting. They're always important. And I think that we just have to do our best to carry that mindset in at all times.
Shen was saying the other day that even though he's new here, he's not afraid to speak up before games, between periods, that kind of thing. What have you noticed about that side of him, and how unusual is it for a new guy to be like so vocal?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I guess. He's been around the league for a long time, though. He's played a bunch of games, and that's who he is. He's a vocal guy, loves to kind of chat, is always around the guys, always talking. So that's who he is, and he's got a lot of comfort. He's very comfortable in his skin and who he is, what he brings to the table, and what he needs to bring. And I think that's really valuable to us.
You take from last time you were in this building to hopefully take care of business in regulation?
Well, I think there's a few things there, obviously, but I think most importantly for us, we feel like we've played really good hockey since then. If anything, a lesson from that game and games we've played here recently is just once you have leads, you got to take care of it and you want to close the deal. Samsonov.
Did Wayne make the trip for you guys?
Wayne did not make the trip. He won't be
So
playing.
Zahorna will make his debut.
Correct.
Okay.
Expecting from him, what have you heard from the Marlies on how he's done?
Well, I think he's done well there for them. He's coming off of an injury here recently. He only played one game since coming back from an upper body injury, so he hasn't really played a great deal for them since being there. But he's a big guy, has some skill, and we're going to move him around the lineup and play him in different spots here today. But he's played in the league before, so he has some experience there. I think the timing's right in terms of him being the guy to come up, just because you never know what you might encounter and you may need him, and he hasn't spent a day with us here up until yesterday, so it's good to get him up here.
How much does, I know you've talked about this in the past, but playing these desperate teams kind of help solidify what you want to do as a team between now and the playoffs?
Well, it brings a lot to the games, right? I mean, there's a playoff intensity to it, certainly when we were in here, and then to go back to the earlier question of what we took away from that game or what we learned is just that a game in here against Ottawa, as we've known over the years, even when there's not playoff spots at stake, the games are intense and they're loud and all those kind of things. So the playoff intensity that Ottawa will bring will demand the best from us.
What stands out most to you about the challenge Tim Stützle presents?
Just such dynamic skill, speed. He evades checks and defenders, creates passing lanes, shot lanes for himself. That line's as good as any line in the league, that he plays on. So you've got to really be dialed in and do a good job against them.
The decision to go with Samsonov, is that partly what you were talking about earlier this week about trying to get him on the road more and Matt at home more?
Yeah, it's really just that simple for me. Just trying to it's not even so much about the results necessarily. It's more just the workloads on the road and trying to even out those splits a little bit. Just something we've talked about throughout the season, and some of the injuries and things that we've dealt with. The schedule hasn't really worked out for that to be the case. So down the stretch here, just as we've looked at things, I think that's just an easier way for us to look at it. Not to say that it's that Murray won't play on the road or Sammy won't play at home, but as we looked at this weekend, I thought it was an easy decision because of that.
Forward with just a few games left, how much are these scenarios being dictated by just wanting to prepare for multiple situations that you might face in the playoffs?
In regards to what specifically?
So starting different goalies in different positions, like working things out just to prepare what they could face in the playoffs?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, you need to be able to play at home and on the road and all that. But like I said, we've talked about this throughout the season, earlier on, and then Murray got injured and we weren't able to necessarily equal out those starts and that workload. So it's something here now that we've got Murray back up and running that we wanted to be mindful of it. But, for the most part, I know there's, still a lot of focus on our 11 and 7 and those kind of things. But, we've been dialed in a lot of different things here. I mean, you look at, we talked about it the other night. For the most part, our top 2 lines have been intact and really haven't been broken up very much. Really, we've had the top 4 defense, top 2 pairs there certainly have been dialed in and playing together consistently. There's very few disruptions here now, and we've been pretty consistent with that for 5 or 6 games now. So things are really starting to solidify themselves and giving us a good sample of some different things that we've wanted to look at there.
Power play as well. I mean, it's harder to score in any situation, I imagine, come playoff time, but is there a point of emphasis to have that in a good place going into that time of year?
Yeah, of course. For sure it is. Things in the playoffs are different. You get one opponent that's absolutely dialed in on you, and they know your tendencies and strengths and weaknesses and all those kind of things. Power play let us down the other night. Yet, when we go out and we look back at our game in Nashville, I thought our power play goal in the third period at a time when we had a chance to extend our lead, 5 minutes or so left in the game, whatever it is, I thought our guys went out there very calmly, and considering the point in time in the game, to me was as good a power play as we've had all season in terms of execution and then just scoring a goal and doing a lot of things you want to do. So that was a real high for us and a great moment for us, and then obviously come back with it. Have a disappointing night the other night is not a good thing, but we've seen some really strong performances from our power play at key times, and that's what I'm focused on.